that you can probably that
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Women Build Week Do-It-Yourself Drywall Clinic. I am Amy Geludo. I am the operations manager here at Habitat, and we just thought we would try to continue the tradition of coming together to empower women to learn construction skills and bring awareness to the fact that Habitat Newburgh always has women on site, women that do all kinds of tasks on the construction site, everything from painting to digging holes in the basement, framing, you name it. The women on site are doing it. We currently don't have a Women Build project started. We have completed 9 Women Build homes here at Habitat Newburgh, which is quite extraordinary, and we're awfully proud of that. Today, I have with me Tony, who is a frequent volunteer, and our AmeriCorps Gabby. And we thought we would start by playing the video that was pre-recorded with instructions, including what you'll need to repair drywall, go through the process, and then Gabby and Tony are available for questions. You can pop your questions in the chat box, whether you're viewing via YouTube or Facebook. Just pop your questions into the chat box. We have Gary, who you cannot see, you just see his name there on the screen. He is moderating those questions, so he will get your questions addressed at the end of the video. And so Gary is going to start the video, and we are going to watch. We are so glad that you joined us today, and we hope you learn the valuable skill of repairing drywall.
Hi there, I'm Tony, and I'm a volunteer here at Habitat for Humanity. I've been with Habitat for about 3.5 years, and it's been very important because as a former educator, I always saw what it meant for students to have a house and a home to go to, and how important it is for families to be able to be families inside a house.
Hi everybody, I'm Gabby. I'm an AmeriCorps member with Habitat Newburgh. I've been here since the end of August and my term will end in July. I've worked intermittently at different Habitat affiliates over the last 5 years throughout college and now in New York. And I decided to do a year of service with Habitat Newburgh and just Habitat in general because I believe in their mission, and in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, doing my student teaching, I actually really did see the need for students and families to have a safe and affordable place to live where they felt comfortable. So we're here today together for International Women's Build Week, and unfortunately we can't be on site doing something together, but so we have a cool DIY project planned for you guys where we are going to be patching and repairing drywall. So we're going to go ahead and show you all of the materials you might need for any types of holes you might have at home that you'd want to repair. So Tony's going to go through, show you the different holes that we will be fixing today, and then I'll go through the specific materials you need for each hole.
Well, these are some of the different kinds of holes that you might find in your walls, especially if you have children or pets. These are easy. These are we were trying to hang a picture, or we hung a picture, and we have a number of little small holes in the wall. This is a little bit bigger one where you're going to need a little bit different kind of equipment to patch. Maybe a ball, maybe a handle of something. And this is a big whoops where you're really going to need a little bit more specialized tools. And this one we'll be showing you how to patch as well. We'll show you how to patch all 3.
All right, so now to go from that to the basics that you might need. First, since we're patching holes, you're going to need some sort of spackle or joint compound to patch your holes. then in order to apply that to the hole, you'll need some type of putty knife. I mean, if you don't have one of these around your house, I'm sure for just a small hole like this, a type of plastic knife could work just fine. For a bigger hole, obviously you'd want something more substantial. Next, an essential, if it's a hole of this size or larger, some type of tape. It could be either this mesh tape that is self-sticking, or there's also this type of paper tape. So either or, it doesn't matter. Now, if you had a bigger hole, say like this, you might need a ruler and a pencil to be able to mark out how much of the drywall you need to cut out and then replace. In order to cut out the drywall for a bigger hole like that, you'll need some sort of scrap drywall and a knife, either this knife to score the drywall, which is just a regular utility knife, or they have specific drywall knives that you can get. By no means is this necessary. And then as well, if you were to be repairing a big hole like this, you would need drywall screws, anything like this. These are Phillips head, and so to be able to use them, either a Phillips head screwdriver or just a screw gun if you have one around the house with a Phillips head bit. And then the last part would be after your compound has dried, you would just need to be able to sand that down, either with a sanding block or just loose sandpaper. Anything I'm forgetting?
No, I think you got it covered.
All right.
May need some water for cleanup and a rag to dust the walls off with. Your vacuum works really well to get rid of drywall dust. And you're going to want to cover the floor. If you're doing this on a wall, you're going to want to cover the floor because getting drywall out of a carpet is very difficult. Okay, the first thing you need to do if you're going to spackle anything is you're going to need to clean it up. It may just mean dusting the wall off. You want to make sure that everything is nice and flat. It may mean a little scrubbing with a small piece of sandpaper just to get rid of all the little fuzzy edges. It may mean taking your knife to it, or a knife to it, and cutting off the drywall that's loose and tucking it in. But when you're finished, you want a nice clean surface so that the spackle sticks. Gabby's going to do the large hole, which takes a little bit more work.
And so the difference with this large hole is that slapping some tape on it and some joint compound won't fix it. It'll actually start oozing out because of the size of it. So what we actually need to... Okay, so this is where you would actually need a ruler and a pencil for this bigger hole, because you're actually going to need to cut out this drywall and then cut a new square to replace it. So we already have 2 lines here that we drew earlier to make sure that you'd be able to see. But now I'll just finish off this square for us, and then I'll cut it out. Probably about that big is fine. We just want to be able to fit it in there and get that busted drywall out. Now I'm going to take the knife and actually start cutting out this square for us. If for some reason you didn't have that type of knife, we can try scoring it with just this utility knife. So see, we have pieces starting to fall out, and we're going to want to clean up all these edges once we get our square. And so see, we can pull out some of that that's a little bit easier from where the big hole was. And so see, we're just cleaning up our square so that we can cut a nice new piece that'll be able to fit in there.
Should have a nice clean hole. It looks like this. It takes some work.
And so then, from the scrap of drywall that we showed, you'll cut a piece that will fit right in to that hole. But when you have a hole this big, you can't just throw your square of drywall in there and hope that it stays. So actually what we did on one side already is we put this little piece of wood back in here, and we just screwed it in with 2 drywall screws to support it. So we'll do the same on the other side. So then, after you put your wood in and you have support for your new square of drywall, it should fit right in, nice, like that. And then you'll use some more drywall screws to be able to fasten it into place. Now go ahead and screw some of those in, Tony. And as you see, Tony didn't sink in the screws too far because we want to be able to put our joint compound over, and it'll be a nice coat. There won't be any holes sunk in that the joint compound gets sucked into.
Okay, so we're going to patch the real little holes. It's very simple. All you need to do is take a little bit of joint compound on your knife and go catty corner, pressing over the holes. Oops. That's why you cover the floor. And you're going to want to try to get as much off as you can, but you don't want to overwork it. It's kind of like icing. You have enough pressure to get it on the wall, but not so much that you actually suck it right back off the wall as well, because it will stick to the knife and come right back out. When it dries, you'll need to determine whether you need to put some more in or not. And that goes for all of the holes and all of the things that we do. It's probably going to be at least a 2-stepper with the drywall compound. Okay? With a hole this size, you're going to need to make yourself a piece of tape that covers it. This is really nice because it sticks and it helps you and it gives you 2 hands to do some other things. First thing you're gonna do is put some drywall compound around the hole. If you were to try to put it in this hole, it would either fall into your wall or fall out the front on your carpet or your floor. You're gonna do some spreading around. Going to take a piece of tape, a little bit bigger than the hole, kind of like when you saw the big hole cut. And you're just gonna gently push it in the drywall compound that you've already got there. This hole, if you have a bigger knife, would be easier to use a bigger knife. So I'm gonna ask for the bigger knife that's over there, because then you don't have to do quite so much fiddling with it. You're going to take some drywall, and then you're going to go over the top of the tape. And again, you'll have to come back after it dries to see if you've got enough on there. Usually with tape, you need at least 2 coats, because it doesn't take it. There'll be something showing. There's always something showing. So.
And that goes for either tape, either the mesh or the paper tape.
All right, so you'll do some drywall over it and spackling over it, and you'll have to come back after it dries. We're going to turn the box around, so Gabby can do a little tape and a little drywall on this one, and you're going to do the same thing, very similar to what we did with the tape on the smaller hole. I'm going to go around and get some compound around it. I'm going to measure your tape.
And so for this one, we'll need 4 pieces to go around every one of the seams that we created with the square.
Was this one up and down?
Yeah.
Up and down. Right, you're going to basically do the same thing. Tape it in. Get your 4 pieces on. I'm going to aim the middle of the tape for the seam, for where the drywall and your patch meet. And then you're going to want to come back and do a second coat.
And a hole this large will most likely take more than just 2 coats.
You want to get all the parts and pieces of the tape. Hidden and buried under the drywall, or the drywall compound. Spackle, joint compound, whatever you want to call it. And this will have to dry. Again, you'll have to come back. And you may need to put compound over the patch too. Depends on how well it fit in there. All right, we have some drywall that we did prior, and the easiest thing to do with drywall is to sand it. You might find, I don't know if you can see it over here, but we got some on the wall. If it's not over the hole that you're trying to sand, you can take a little damp rag. It may just wash right off of there. I think we have some water. Water is your friend when you're doing drywall. It's wonderfully easy to clean up. And you may just want to go like this, and it'll scrub right out. Now this drywall is not painted, so you'll see that it gets the board wet. Hopefully your wall is painted. If it's not, you may want to go really light with the water. You can sand the drywall down with a regular piece of sandpaper, or you can use a sanding block, or you can make your own sanding block.
Make your own little piece of wood if you just have loose sandpaper. Wrap it around, and voila, DIY sanding block.
One of the nice things about a sanding block is that it helps you get the edges flush with the wall. If you use a piece of sandpaper and you push too hard here or there, you'll get ripples. You'll get more ripples. And you can just take the sandpaper, sanding block, sand in a circle, dust it off a little bit. As you can see, this is a really dusty process at this point. You may want to keep everybody away until you're done. You may also want to have a vacuum handy. It vacuums up much easier than it brushes up. Just nice and light with sand until the area is flat. Now those were the little holes. These are little nail holes like you might be hanging a picture. Okay. This is
our medium size hole.
This is the medium size hole. And again, you're going to need to go around, as you can see by the drawing. This hole would have had to have a second patch because it did not fill the whole thing. The drywall did not fill the whole thing. One of the niftier things about drywall is it goes on kind of light gray, and when it's dry, it dries. You can't really tell whether it's dried up or not. You just want to go around and feather the edges in, go nice and light. And if you're not sure how you did, look at the drywall from a couple of different angles, because different lighting will show you different things on the drywall. You may decide if you didn't like it before you paint it. It's easier to put more drywall or spackle compound on there. So look at it from a couple of different angles to make sure that you didn't miss something, either in your sanding or in your patching. And then the next couple of steps will be to prime the area and then to paint it. If you try painting over it, the spackle compound just keeps sucking in the paint, and it won't look like the rest of your wall. So you want to make sure you get a little bit of primer, you prime the area, just go a little bit outside the patch, and then you can paint the area over. And your wall will hopefully be back in one piece.
So Tony, if I were to do this at home, how long of a process would this be? Just for these little nail holes that I have all over my apartment.
If you put drywall compound in these first thing in the morning, you might be able to come back later on that afternoon and they might be dry. The little holes dry pretty quick, depends on how much you put in them. Probably better to wait till tomorrow.
Okay.
The bigger holes, it's definitely a 2-day. It won't, the more compound you put on there, the longer it takes to dry, obviously. So you may want to do this today, come back tomorrow, see if you need a second coat to fill any spaces or holes. Come back the next day. You know, obviously it does not take very long to do any of the coats here, but it's worth being patient because you don't want to throw wet paint on the drywall and all of a sudden have it running down your wall.
So once you do all this nice work before we sand, it's a waiting game.
It is definitely a waiting game.
But it's worth it. The end product is worth it.
It's worth it. And you can see where we spackled before. You can see that it's gray. And you can see the holes. These would need a second coat. Depending upon your spackle compound, sometimes it shrinks as well. And it may need a second coat. So waiting a full day, it's worth it. You know, just do it, go away, go do something else, and come back, because otherwise it can be very frustrating to have the drywall compound come and go.
All right, so there you have it. There is our instructional video on the actual process of repairing the drywall. And we are opening it up for questions. So if you have popped a question into the chat box or into the comment box on either YouTube or Facebook, Gary can read those to Gabby and Tony, and they can get them answered for you. I will start with the one question. We had a visitor here at the office today, and she asked about plaster walls. Is the process the same if the wall is older and made from plaster?
Okay. Plaster's a little bit different. The spackling and drywall compound or joint compound are basically meant for wallboard, which is screwed onto your wall. If you have plaster walls and you have small holes like the nail holes or little scrubs that don't go all the way through, you can try spackling compound or joint compound. Do the spackling compound. Spackle is usually a little bit thicker than joint compound, might stay a little bit better. But if it goes all the way through to the plaster lath, whether it's wire or you have the little wood sheathing in the background, you're going to have to put plaster in it. You may have to repair the background too, kind of like Gabby repaired that hole, the big hole. You may have to repair your lath as well. But for bigger holes, you're going to have to go with plaster, because the joint compound or the spackling compound isn't really going to stay on the wall for a long amount of time. It's not designed to do that. It's designed for wallboard.
Well said, Tony. So there's one other question in the Facebook chat. The question was, are all walls made out of sheetrock? Which I think the first question kind of answers, but I'll let you take it away anyway.
Want to do that one, Gab?
Yeah, I would say no, not all walls are made of sheetrock, and that kind of goes back to the question that Tony answered about having plaster walls. If you don't know, I'm not quite sure what the best method would be. Tony, do you have any guesses as to what the best method would be if you were not aware?
It might be safe if you have an open basement or an open attic to go look, because you might get a hint by looking at maybe an unfinished wall. That would be the safest. Then you don't have to open a wall up to guess. But usually plaster, if you find a hidden spot, if you can't tell from an open wall, if you find a hidden spot that nobody will ever see, maybe the back corner of a closet or something like that, and you tap on it, wallboard sort of turns to powder when you get through the paper coating, and plaster just sort of crumbles and crackles and kind of falls off the wall. I definitely look for a spot that nobody's going to see if you have to do that, but I would go for an open wall attic or basement, or maybe even a closet or a stairwell.
Yeah, so to be clear, we don't condone you putting holes in your walls, but if it's necessary,
No.
one that is not super visible.
Do either of you have any idea at what point they started using drywall versus plaster? So maybe that could be another indication whether, you know, your home was built in 1900, like some of the rehabs that we do, or was it built in 1975 and then you're probably got drywall in there? Does anybody know about when that they switched over from that plaster-ish stuff to drywall?
So I just looked up your question because I am not aware, but knowledge is power. And it says in the mid 20th century, drywall construction became prevalent in North America. That's what it's telling me.
Okay.
So it's safe to say if you have a really old home, you have plaster walls in there, and they might take some extra care. I'm sure you can find someone that specializes in that older home that could help you out with that. Again, Tony did say that if you're just trying to repair some small holes, you can go ahead and fix those up with spackle, the lighter of the two, not joint compound, but spackle. I know I have actually done that. So have used it in tiny, those little nail holes that you have, or a little ding. I have used it there.
All right. Are we ready for another question? All right. The next question is, any advice for repairing drywall that has some water damage?
I think my question would be how much water damage? What's the area that we're talking about? That would be my first thing. And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but say it's like a foot by foot piece where that's the only piece of the drywall that seems to have water damage. I would say maybe come out another 2 inches both ways, and cut that if it's in the middle of a piece. Otherwise, I would say maybe you might have to do a total replacement if it's a corner piece, maybe, or we have those corner metal slits, right, Tony, or aluminum slits that can go up in the corners.
You can. You're right about, you need to get rid of the damaged area and then get to something that's dry, because you don't want anything growing in it. Drywall has a propensity to grow mold, and you certainly don't want that. You're going to need to cut it out and pretty much do the same kind of patch you did on that bigger hole. You may need to put 3 or 4 supports behind it, and go from there. The stain, especially if it's stained, it's just going to bleed right through, and water basically disintegrates and melts drywall. So you're right, Gab. You're going to have to basically cut it out and repair and replace it.
All right. That's pretty much all. That's all of the Facebook, and let me check YouTube real quick. Yep, that's all of the questions in the chat box that we have currently. So is there anything that you feel like maybe the video didn't quite cover that you'd like to talk about now?
Nothing comes to my mind.
Okay, Amy, do you have any other questions about the drywall repair process?
I would say I'd like a little clarification on what happens after sanding. So you talked a tiny little bit about priming. You said go a little bit beyond the patchwork. There was a little bit of sanding going on at the same time Tony was talking about that. So maybe we can just repeat that process. And do you put like 1 coat of primer on, or do you do 2 coats? I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Well, after you're done sanding, you should read the paint can for the primer. It will tell you how many coats. Depends. Paint now is really nice because it's paint and primer in one, but you'll have to read the can to see what it'll do. If you've got plain primer, you need at least 1 coat, possibly 2. You go out beyond the patch because it blends it in with the color on your wall a little bit better. And then it's like the spackling process. You prime it, you wait for it to dry, go away, come back in a couple of hours. And again, it'll tell you on the can how long it takes. And then go from there for painting.
I would also like to reiterate to always read the directions. that's always the best method to start with. But to clarify about if you happen to get one of our nifty little kits that we made for you, your drywall or spackle compound, whatever it is, actually, we didn't use it, so I'm not sure, but I think it goes on pink. And then when it's dry, it changes color. So you don't have to take any guesses as to when your spackle compound will actually be dry.
That's really awesome. That's always helpful. I know that sometimes it's hard to be patient. You know, we want to get done with the project, so we want to start painting. And you guys have made it clear that it's best to wait and look at it with a fresh eye and come back at a later time to see how it has dried and whether or not you need an additional coat. So that's really helpful. I know that I don't want to ever wait. I always want to just go ahead and get that job done, but it's definitely a waiting game. And yeah, they do sell that spackling compound that it's in a can that's pink, and when you put it on, it is colored, and then it does actually dry white. So that's kind of helpful to know if you want to make sure that you're being as patient as you should be to use something like that. It's a little helpful. Also, if you haven't picked up your kit, you can still do that, because you can watch the video at your leisure and stop it and look at it. And it does include a piece of yellow tape. It was kind of hard to see that mesh tape that was being laid up on the wall when Gabby and Tony were doing that repair. But the tape that we have in the kit is yellow, so it's a little bit easier to see. Also, you can tell if it's not completely covered when it's yellow, and I find that helpful as well. It doesn't blend at all. It's not see-through like that mesh tape that you guys were using. So I find that the colored mesh tape is helpful to me. How about any other products that might be useful that you could find at your local Lowe's that you did not use today? Are there other kits or patches or things to make life easier when you were, say, repairing a medium or larger size hole?
Yeah, I can even say if you do have a bigger hole, like myself and Tony were repairing, you noticed how in the video Tony asked for a larger putty knife. So in your kits, you only have a very small one for small holes. But it's definitely useful to go and spend a few extra dollars to get a knife that's actually going to cover the length or the width of the hole, to be able to feather it out and make it blend better with the wall that is not damaged. So that would be one of my suggestions.
I believe if you go and rattle around the Lowe's area as well, you might find larger tape, larger squares. I've seen those. Kind of like, it's like the difference between a really big Band-Aid and a small one that you might be able to put over a patch like that. You have to sort of go and look and see what the store has. You might discover that they've made your job easier by having larger Band-Aids to put on the wall.
Yeah, and then if for some reason you were to run out of all of the compound that we gave you or break something that we gave you, Lowe's also has some pre-made kits that you might have seen in the first video that myself and Gary did that was broadcast last week as well. So you always have that as a go-to as well. You don't have to be searching around and hope you have the right thing.
Excellent, excellent. So Gary, any other questions pop up?
Nope. There have been no further questions in either chat box.
No further questions. I don't know if you all want to just tell us a little bit about what happened on site today. I know that you guys rushed here from site. What was going on at site? What tasks were you completing today?
Tony, I'll let you take it away and I'll follow up if you forget anything.
Oh, we had a big group effort going on, which is probably one of the best things about Habitat is there are very few projects you can accomplish on your own. We basically erected a number of walls today, migrated them around, and got almost all of the perimeter of the upstairs on North Miller done. And it was good. It got the windows framed out all at one time.
Yeah, so we're almost completely done with our framing up at North Miller. So hopefully by tomorrow, maybe all of our framing, at least exteriorly, on the second floor will be done, and then we'll start moving in some stairs. But also we had 2 or 3 people down in the basement actually putting in some windows that we had as well. They were already framed out and the windows just needed to start going in. So slowly but surely, we're definitely making a lot of progress, which is nice to see.
That's awesome. It's great to hear the progress being made up at 187. You know, it's so different not being together for Women Build Week. We normally have groups in, and we normally have a luncheon, and we celebrate this process of us coming together, supporting women in construction. I think it's really good to point out that in the construction industry, less than 15% of those working in the industry are women. But of course, Habitat likes to bust barriers and do things a little unconventionally. And on our construction sites, 50%, nearly 50%, I think it's 48, Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 48% of our volunteers are women. So there are always women volunteers on the construction site doing every task you can think of, always willing to teach others the skills that they have learned and are mastering. And I'd love to hear from Gabby and Tony about anything that you can think of that would encourage women to come out and build. I know I have to put the disclaimer out there that Habitat is working with limited number of volunteers at this point. We only have volunteers that have volunteered before because of our COVID restrictions, and sites are really limited to a small number of folks and those with experience. So sorry that if you haven't volunteered before, you will have to wait a little while till things come back to normal to join us. But I would love to hear from Tony and Gabby about some of the things that you've learned being on site.
Okay, I can start. I would say one thing that I have learned on all my Habitat sites is that it's okay to make mistakes, because I've made a lot of them, as I'm sure a lot of other people have. But the awesome thing about Habitat is you can make the mistake and then you learn exactly how to fix it. And next time you're going to do it right, and you can do it on your own too, if you need to take those skills back to your own home. And something else that Habitat has given me is confidence in myself, in being able to take what I learned from a very supportive group of people and then apply it in my own life. And being on the build site is just extremely fun. You feel as if you don't feel as if you are building something together, and you have the support of everybody else, which really makes the love that goes into a home so much more prevalent, I guess, to know all the great people that are working on it.
There are an incredible bunch of people that volunteer at Habitat, incredible people that work at Habitat in Newburgh. I started on a women's build. That was my first in after I retired from my former place of employment. And it was wonderful because everybody is willing to teach you how to do something. And they do. And it's good because they teach you again and again and again, because you do something in one house and then a year and a half later, you get to do the same thing someplace else, and you're like, I don't remember, and that's okay. As Gabby said, it's always okay, because everybody's so patient and willing to reteach you, or willing to show you their favorite 3 tricks, how to get something done, and just make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how today we've had the comments a few times. So our coffee break this morning, our construction manager, Mike, mentioned that his first build was a women build. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that when I started, same. It was up on South Miller, and I volunteered there, and it was a women build site. So I would say that it's really a great place to start with the folks that volunteer on the Women Build site. They also have chocolate, by the way. So that is always a good a good thing to have on site. I have to say, it's fun, it's lively, it's always a good time. And again, Women Build is not restricted just to women. We do have women leading the project. And we have, for Women Build, we ask that 75% of the work be done by women, but there's guys on site at Women Build. It is not a restrictive thing. Of course, we always have different folks coming in and out. It's whatever you signed up to do. You know, we're going to help you learn the skill and get the task accomplished. And the end result is a beautiful, safe, and affordable, most important, affordable home for a family that has worked so hard to achieve the goal of home ownership and is working to improve the life of their families for generations. So, you know, that's the end result is that home for a family. I know, Gabby, you mentioned last week something about what it's meant to you to work alongside the family. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I just, like I said, all of the love that comes from the volunteers to build and make a home, all these people that come out selflessly to help out other people is really amazing. But then to be able to work alongside homeowners and their children and their spouses, and to kind of hear their stories and everything that got them to this point, and to be able to learn alongside them, and then also teach them some of the tools and skills that they'll be able to take along and hopefully have this home and take care of this home for a really long time is a really, really powerful experience. So that's another reason that I love Habitat, and that I love working with Habitat.
That is so awesome. I want to thank Gabby, Tony, and our tech guy, Gary, for joining us this morning. If we have no further questions, if you think of a question later, if you're viewing this video at a later time, feel free to email any questions you might have, and we'll get them answered for you from one of our pros. You can email us at info@habitatnewburgh.org, and we'll be glad to answer your questions. Again, the video, if you're watching it at a later time, will answer any questions you might have. Again, we look forward to the day when we can open volunteer sites up for regular activities. They are a little limited right now, but in the future months, as we get past this pandemic, which we will be opening up sites to new volunteers, and we really look forward to having you join us. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will get your questions answered. If Gabby, Tony, Gary, if you have any last remarks, feel free.
I would just say keep looking out for when those sites do open up, because I'm very excited to meet all of the rest of the wonderful volunteers I hear so much about that I haven't gotten the chance to yet. So hopefully before my term is over, I hope we get back to a little bit more of normalcy.
I have to echo that. I'd like to be very nice to see everybody that we haven't seen in a long time. You know, we'll miss you guys.
I would like to third that. I miss everybody terribly. And I also want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a new experience, whether it's the way we stream it to the concept of a instructional video as well. It's all been new for us. So thanks for being a part of our journey into the unknown, I suppose.
Thank you, everyone. We hope you have enjoyed this DIY drywall repair clinic, and we look forward to seeing you on site real soon. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.